Have you ever seen those commercials where they're talking about brain health, brain supplements, and wondered how effective are they actually? We're going to talk about that today on the DrSnowBrainHealth show. And I'm joined by Dr. Snow. So Dr. Snow, let's talk about the market for brain supplements and what the marketplace looks like. So how many memory supplements are in the marketplace for brain health?
You know, when I started this company and I started working on Percepta, and we're going to talk about that, I think on Amazon they were probably maybe 500 to 1,000 memory supplements. These are supplements that are supposed to improve your memory, focus, and concentration. Now that I look, there's got to be 3,000 to 5,000 supplements for memory on Amazon.com alone. And then, you know, you watch commercials on TV. There's all these new supplements. I think there's even a new company that I just saw a commercial on. And what they do is they put in a bunch of the same ingredients. A lot of these supplements, they just reuse the same ingredients over and over again, and it's different combinations. And the question to me is, you know, what are they really going after as the target? And so there is a maze of memory supplements, and what we're going to talk about today, we're going to decipher the maze of memory supplements. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Sounds good. So how many of those memory supplements are supported by good quality research?
The answer is not many. Some of the supplements are all advertising. It's all, you know, not a lot of research behind it, and they're all making all these claims, and there isn't a lot of rigorous studies behind it. And when I talk about rigorous studies, I'm talking about preclinical testing, or using animal models, or using different in vitro screening assays like what we did with our memory supplement called Percepta, which we're going to talk about. You know, human trials are very important as well. You know, we're setting up to do a big human trial for Percepta. Some of the human clinical trials are quite interesting because there's a little trick that they do, and we can talk about what's this trick.
What is this trick?
So the trick is, if you look at the supplements, and let's say they have 5, 10, 15, 20 ingredients in there, on the box it says clinically tested, right? Scientifically tested, clinically tested. And guess what? The clinical test is not on the combination that you actually see in the product. So they'll put in, you know, something like ginkgo biloba, and they'll say, oh, this is one of the ingredients and it's scientifically tested. Yes, the clinical test was done with one ingredient, ginkgo biloba. The clinical test was not done with the 10, 15, 20 ingredients that are all in the box, in the product. So, you know, a good example, for instance, here's focus factor, and you look at the ingredients, there's got to be 40 ingredients in here. You got to take 4 giant pills a day. So the question I have is that did they actually do the clinical trials on the combination? And many of them do not. They just pull off the data from scientific publications in which there's only one ingredient that was clinically tested. So that's a problem.
Okay, so they just add a bunch of things that people have name recognition of the ingredient, and they go wild and say, look, I add these all together. Clearly the cocktail is going to be so much better than just taking the individual supplement that you could get at GNC or VitaShop or whatever organization that you're buying your vitamins, and you're saying that theory doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold water.
Unless they actually show that the clinical trial was the combination of all the ingredients. Now, some of them will do it, you know, and some of them actually have a real clinical trial, but many of them, the trick is, you know, scientifically tested, and it's not the combination. If you really dig deep into the science, you'll see that clinically tested does not mean that they actually looked at the 10 ingredients together in the actual product in a human clinical trial.
What are the top 20 memory supplements in the marketplace today?
So the top 20 selling memory supplements, like Prevagen, is very big. It's made by Quincy Biosciences, and we're going to get into each of the major ones because I really want to give my opinion as to what I believe is going on with these memory supplements. Prevagen's very well marketed. You'll see TV commercials all over, most of the channels, and they don't say very much, right? They say, well, I feel better after I've been taking Prevagen for 2 years, and I think my memory may be better. And there's, specific claims like that. So it's a jellyfish protein. We're going to talk about it. Another big one you'll see in stores is Nariva. Nariva, I have it here. By the way, let's take a look at Prevagen. Here's Prevagen. Improves memory, they say right on it. Then you have Nariva, brain performance, focus, memory, learning, accuracy, concentration. Now the question is, do they actually show all that? Another big one, and we'll talk about it, is Alpha Brain. This is Onnit Labs, Joe Rogan's company, that was recently acquired by Unilever. They all got very rich off of this. Interesting thing about this is they have cat's claw in it, and we know that cat's claw, unkeratomentosa, is excellent for memory, focus, concentration. And we've done a lot of work on it, and we have all the patents on it. And in fact, cat's claw is the main ingredient that's in our product called Percepta, which we're going to talk about. So Onnit Labs has Alpha Brain, and they have two forms of it. It's very interesting. They had an original Alpha Brain, which has cat's claw on it, and they have a black label Alpha Brain. And what's really interesting to me is they got rid of the cat's claw on the black label, and I think it had to do that we had all the patents on the use of cat's claw for memory, cognition, focus, concentration. Another big one that you'll see if you ever go to Costco stores in the US is Focus Factor. Now, Focus Factor has been out for a long time. Originally, the FDA, FTC went after them and they changed all the ingredients. But these are like 40 ingredients, and you have to take 4 large pills a day. So that could be a problem. And then we have Dr. Amen, who has a lot of stuff on TV about memory, and he can help your memory and all this kind of stuff. He has his own products called Brain MD, Brain and Memory Power Boost, supports healthy brain and memory performance, and we'll talk about that. And then, of course, I could go through thousands of them. One of the things is we published a paper in 2021 in Scientific Reports. It's a Nature journal, one of the top 10 medical journals in the world. And we showed that the dietary supplement Percepta outperforms the top 20 selling memory support dietary supplements in the world by over 50% in targeting brain plaques and tangles. And we should talk about, again, we emphasize this in a lot of our other videos, what is the real cause of memory loss? So what are all these supplements going after? They want to improve your memory, but how do they do it? And remember, things have to get into the brain. So we'll talk about oral bioavailability, which is very important. And we should also talk about blood-brain barrier penetration, which is very important. So let's dive into some of these questions a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about the trilogy. So what causes memory loss as we age?
So I've been studying memory loss for over 30 years. I've done a lot of research initially in Alzheimer's disease and then brain aging and just memory loss in general. And it's all published. It's like we're not discovering something new about what causes memory loss. You start accumulating these Swedish meatballs in your brain starting in your 20s, and they're called amyloid plaques. So amyloid plaques consist of a protein called the beta amyloid protein. It's usually a larger protein that's found on the cell membrane of neurons and astrocytes and microglia. And then it gets clipped on neurons into two clips, and it makes a small protein that starts sticking together. And it's almost like a snowball going down the hill, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it forms this big plaque. And it's in between neurons. So to remember a thought, you have to connect from different areas of your brain. The hippocampus in the middle of your brain is basically the memory center of the brain. But in the cortex, you have connections that will go into the hippocampus. And if you start having Swedish meatballs or boulders in your brain, it's going to start blocking the connections to remember a thought. The second thing, it's PTI, plaques, tangles, and inflammation. The second component is tangles, known as neurofibrillary tangles. They're paired helical twisting filaments that are inside neurons. Originally, they're part of the microtubules, and what happens is they start twisting and they start dying, and the neurons start dying. And that's why you have dying neurons in the brain. They consist of a protein called tau protein. So plaques, tangles, and then if you have plaques and tangles, you could actually come to autopsy when you die, and if a neuropathologist looks in your brain, they can see lots of plaques and tangles, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have memory loss. The third component, which is really important, and especially during the last 5 years of research, is inflammation. So PTI is plaques, tangles, inflammation. Neural inflammation seems to be a very important target, especially when you're getting memory loss. So if you have plaques, tangles, and inflammation, you definitely have memory loss. There's no doubt about it. So that's the trilogy of what causes memory loss. Now, you know, a lot of the drugs that go after plaques, there's some new drugs out there by Biogen and Eisai. They're only hitting plaques, so you don't get 100% improvement, and you don't stop the memory decline by 100%. You know, the stoppage is about 27%, because they're only going after 1/3 of what's really causing memory loss. So really, you have to be able to hit plaques, tangles, and inflammation. So what did we do in this 2021 paper? We compared our dietary supplement called Percepta. We'll talk about it. It contains cat's claw, unkeratomatose, and oolong tea extract. And we compared it on a weight-to-weight basis to all these memory supplements. And we found that Percepta can outperform all of them by greater than 50% in reducing plaques and tangles. And we did it by a method called in vitro screening, where we weighed out everything and did it in a blind fashion in a comparative weight-to-weight basis. And it was quite amazing. We saw like Percepta's hitting everything, especially plaques and tangles, and we could quantitate it, whereas some of the memory supplements like Prevagen didn't even touch it. You know, it's sometimes it's not surprising to me that things like a jellyfish protein are not going to be touching plaques or tangles. But on the other side, anything that had polyphenols as part of the ingredients showed some activity against plaques and tangles, and we could talk a little bit about that. You know, Nariva, which has coffee fruit in here, which is polyphenol enriched, actually had some good activity. Again, it was not as good as Percepta. Percepta outperforms all of them by over 50%. But if it has polyphenols, some sort of polyphenols as part of it, you know, what can elderberries or fruit powder or coffee fruit or, you know, remnants of red wine, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, all of those type of fruit are high in polyphenols. And we showed, as you'll watch in our other videos that we just put out, is polyphenols are really important, and polyphenols get into the brain. There used to be, for many years, people believe, well, polyphenols don't get into the brain, they don't cross the blood-brain barrier. We did all the research that it does. In fact, I'm probably the world authority on polyphenols getting into the brain. I have over 30 patents issued 20 years ago when people were looking at green tea and then resveratrol and then curcumin, which are all polyphenolic compounds. I'm the one who has all the patents and knew about this in my first company. We were doing polyphenol research and we were making polyphenol-like drugs. So I've been working on this for like over 30 years.
So that leads to a couple of questions. What are polyphenols? Like, what makes a polyphenol? And what is it about? Are both cat's claw and oolong tea extract, are those both polyphenols? Is that why they're effective?
Yes. It's a good question, Scott. So polyphenols are like biochemically, and I know the biochemistry because we studied this. We actually made all these molecules, synthesized them. So polyphenols, like in fruit, are aromatic rings. So it's an aromatic ring, and then it has OH groups that are attached to the aromatic ring. The OH groups are called phenolic groups. And so what we found in cat's claw, and we worked with a group out of University of Otago in New Zealand who are very good plant biochemists, and believe me, I couldn't do this work. These are experts who are good at identifying components within thousands of ingredients, and they're using quite sophisticated quadruple mass spec to pick it up. And what they found is there's not only polyphenols like epicatechin as an example. Now, epicatechin's interesting because it's in green tea, black tea, and oolong tea, and it's also in cat's claw. And then you have things like chlorogenic acid. So these are all single aromatic rings with two OH groups coming off of it. If it's an epicatechin stuck to another epicatechin, it's called an epicatechin dimer. And instead of 2 OH groups, it has 4. Now the interesting, and this is in cat's claw that we discovered, they're known as proanthocyanidins. Proanthocyanidins are in elderberry, red wine, grapeseed extract. Guess what? It's in cat's claw. And not only is it in cat's claw, but we found it gets into the brain in a few minutes. We did a lot of studies in our 2019 paper where we demonstrated that it actually gets in, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and is found in the cortex and hippocampus in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and it stays in the brain for 24 hours. So it's not degraded over a 24-hour period. So we found the most interesting thing is that plaques and tangles, so plaques are boulders, it's like meatballs and spaghetti. The dried up spaghetti would be the tangles. So you got spaghetti and meatballs in your brain starting in your 20s. And by the way, that's why you should start taking these dietary supplements like Percepta in your late teens and early 20s, because what you're trying to do is inhibit the formation of the plaques and tangles. We showed that it could do this in our 2019 paper, and once it's there, it helps reduce it, and we also showed that in other studies in our 2019 paper. So the interesting thing about the proanthocyanidins is if you have the 4 OH groups on one side and they're very close to each other, they actually form like a zipper, like a wedge. It's called the hydroxyl wedge. So the OH groups coming off the 2 aromatic rings on epicatechin dimers form a wedge, and they open up a very insoluble secondary structure called the beta sheet, which is hard to break apart. But the polyphenol dimers can do it, the epicatechin dimers. They open it up and make it fall apart. And then the Pac-Man of the brain, the microglia, come in and they eat it up and they clear it out. What this does is it helps, first of all, decrease your cognitive decline, and second of all, actually improve your memory, because it's clearing out so you can make these connections from different parts of your brain to remember a thought. So your memory, your focus, your concentration is all going to be better. And actually, since cat's claw is also antiviral, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and antibacterial, it's also not only good for your brain, but it's good for the rest of your body as well.
That's really interesting. I'm going to take this conversation a little bit of a different direction, but I think it overlaps with what we have been talking about, which is you've brought a memory supplement, actually a couple memory supplements, right, at this point, to market. Can you walk us through what that process looks like and what your experience, both your personal experience as well as what you've seen from others in the marketplace in terms of what it takes to bring a supplement to market?
Well, it's a lot of work to bring a supplement to market. You also want to have the research behind it, so you want to do a lot of testing. With Percepta, we spent about 20 years of doing various types of in vitro testing. We even had a little mouse that was genetically engineered, and as the little mouse aged, he got more and more plaques in the brain. And guess what? He starts having memory loss, and you could quantitate it in a little swimming pool where they teach them how to swim to a platform that they train them on. And then they take away the platform and they're supposed to remember where it was. And that's called spatial acquisition or hippocampus dependent memory. And so we were testing to see what does the cat's claw ingredients or cat's claw itself due to memory loss in these plaque producing mice. And what we found within 3 months, we could decrease the plaque load in the mice of these animals as they're aging by about 60%. And their memory, remember they're having trouble. Once you start clearing out the plaques, actually they improve their memory almost by 60% in 3 months, and it's almost back to normal. Almost what you see in a non-transgenic or a non-plaque producing mouse. So these were incredible studies, talking about clinical trials. So one thing about Alpha Brain originally, and I'll give it to them, is that they had cat's claw in here as a combination. It was about 25%. And again, we had all the issued US patents on it, and we ended up making a deal with them and basically licensed the technology that allowed them to sell Alpha Brain. But they actually did a human clinical trial on this, and it was published, and they showed that in 45 days, they could improve the memory, focus, and concentration of normal individuals. And these people were like 30, 40 years old, quite young, and yet the cat's claw in here, we believe, is the reason why they improved their memory. Now, the interesting thing about the cat's claw is that later on, when they were bought out by Unilever, they came out with a new brand of Alpha Brain. It's black label. We'll show it on the screen. And guess what? It doesn't contain cat's claw. And I think the reason is because they knew that my company, Cognitive Clarity Incorporated, had all the issued patents on the use of cat's claw for memory, focus, concentration. But I'm telling you, that was a mistake, and as far as my opinion is concerned, because I believe that it's the cat's claw and Alpha Brain that's actually giving the memory improvement. And once you pull it out, and they're putting in, other things that you see, like baclofen, which is a plant, huperzin A, club, which is found in club moss, and various amino acids like L-leucine. So I'm looking at the combination and I think, wow, I don't think this really works. Really, I believe it was the cat's claw that was originally in Alpha Brain is why it was working. So, I'd like to see and notice they don't have a clinical trial on the black label Alpha Brain. So if I was a consumer, I'd like to see the data on that. So they don't have it.
So out of curiosity, a lot of these supplements that I have or that I have bottles for, a lot of them say clinically tested or some variation of clinically tested. What does that look like? What does that mean is when someone puts clinically tested on the product? Like, what can a consumer expect from something that says clinically tested?
This is the trick. I mean, I'm looking at Nariva. Clinically proven natural ingredients. Well, what does that mean? Did they actually do a clinical trial with Nariva on people? Or was it the coffee fruit extract, which is in here 100 milligrams of the total? Was that actually clinically tested? See, what I believe, and you look at focus factor and it says clinically shown to improve memory, concentration, and focus. Now, is it on the combo of 40 ingredients or is it on the 1 or 2 ingredients that was actually tested? Now, we should talk about oral bioavailability because this is the big trick. I did a lot of research on this, and the reason there's only 2 ingredients in Percepta, which is concentrated cat's claw in a specific oolong tea extract, because I know it gets into the brain. And in fact, I did research on this, when we started adding more and more ingredients or components, we found a couple of things. One, it doesn't get into the brain at the maximum bioavailability we saw with 2 ingredients. So if you add a third ingredient, fourth, fifth, 10th, it gets worse and worse and worse. The second thing is some of the ingredients, as you add more, start interacting with each other, and they actually don't do what they were supposed to do if it was a single ingredient. And this is exactly why I do not like memory support dietary supplements with 4 ingredients, 5 ingredients, 10 ingredients, 20 ingredients. I wouldn't go past 3 ingredients for memory support dietary supplement. 1, because of oral bioavailability, which I believe as you add more, it's not getting into the brain. So I don't care what you tell me about clinically tested, that 2 or 3 ingredients have shown to get into the brain, but if you put 10 of them together, it's not going to work as well as if it was separated. And so oral bioavailability is a big issue, and crossing the blood-brain barrier. So you have a blood-brain barrier and you have capillaries in your brain, and it's very tight and it's hard to get in. We found with the Percepta polyphenols it actually crosses over and gets in, and we worked with a group out of Tulane University. That's all they do is blood-brain barrier penetration studies. So here's the trick. Here's how you do it. We had aromatic rings, you remember, and we had OH groups. We actually found a way to radio-label hydrogen on an aromatic ring. And then we saw it going into the brain and found on the other side, basically, in the tissue itself. And you can actually see the radio label show up. And the radio label's not on the phenolic groups, so some of the phenolic groups can come off when it's crossing over, but the aromatic rings are still there, and we have polyphenolics that are still in there as well, but we showed that it could cross over. And
Like, why is it important that they cross over?
well, you remember our target is hitting plaques and tangles, so we want to make sure our stuff gets in and it's actually doing it. So it would be surprising if you don't cross into the brain, but yet you're having all these effects in the brain. You can see the plaques being diminished, and you can see improvement in memory. So we know what our target is. Our target is helping reduce the plaques and tangles, and once you do that, your memory connections are going to be better. That's what we're doing with our Percepta product. What are other people doing? What is Alpha Brain doing with all the different ingredients in there? How's it working? Is it the baclofen? Is it the cat's claw? Is it the amino acids? How is Nariva working? Is it the coffee fruit? I believe the coffee fruit actual polyphenols are good. Now, Prevagen is very interesting. So it's a jellyfish protein. So if you eat a protein, right? Do you think your gut's going to break it down into amino acids?
You're
eating a protein.
I frankly don't know. I mean, it'll break it down into its amino acids.
Your gut will break it down. Now, here's the problem. You're taking a pill. I'm going to eat it. It's Prevagen. It's a single protein, right? Proteins are long. Could be big. Guess what? Your gut will break it down into smaller and smaller amino acids, maybe pieces of 10, 20 amino acids. I bet you this doesn't get into the brain. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So how's it working? Is there a peptide that's getting into the brain? They've never proven what's the mechanism of action. How is this working? So I believe that some of these memory supplements, in my opinion, it's all hype and it's all marketing, it's all advertising. Now, the funny thing is they did clinical studies in this, but guess where the clinical studies were done? It was done in their own house. It was done internal. It wasn't third-party testing. And one of the most important things about doing clinical trials, you want to have nothing to do with it. You want to give the product to somebody, they end up doing it, and it's third-party testing. So, that's another thing about, doing it right, is that they need to have a third party do it for them.
So you just broke down something that I think is really interesting. All right, so you talked about the jellyfish protein. You consume it, it goes into the gut, it's broken down into its constituent amino acids for the body to use. So if you're talking about something like polyphenols, what happens? You take polyphenols, whether you're high concentrations of polyphenols, whether it's cat's claw, blueberries, whatever it is, what is it that the gut is doing with or the body is doing with those polyphenols or those ingredients that it gets then into the brain? Like, how does that work?
We talked about this in my other video called Are Polyphenols Good for Your Brain? And yes, they are. Polyphenols can become transferred a little bit. They can become methylated, glucuronidated, or sulfated. Those are three things that can happen to it. But if you overload it with a concentrate, which is what we do in Percepta, about half the polyphenols are actually still getting into the brain intact. So it's almost like eating tons of blueberries, right? Really good for your brain. You can actually feel it if you take it, for a couple of days. So if you're eating all this stuff, eventually, if it's concentrated, about half of it's going to get into the brain in its proper form. And then it's going to have the direct effects of the 4-hydroxyl groups reducing the plaques. Why are the plaques being reduced in these animals in which we had, gave them cat's claw? It's because the cat's claw actually was getting into the brain. The polyphenols were still working, either intact, methylated, sulfated, or glucuronidated. So we have evidence for that. And there is there is transformation, but if we give it orally, we still see very good activity. And I've worked a lot on this.
So you've talked about Prevagen. What about Nariva? Because I've seen commercials when I'm sitting at the bar at Buffalo Wild Wings and watching the game about this supplement. Tell me more about it, because I'm just curious.
So Nariva, here's a box of it. It's basically their main thing in there is coffee fruit extract, which I'm actually a pretty big fan of, because coffee fruit extract has a lot of polyphenols in it. And when we did our studies comparing Percepta directly to Nariva, we saw Percepta was better, but Nariva had some good activity, maybe 50%, 60% of what we saw with Percepta. So I gotta give them some credit in actually finding this coffee fruit extract. And it has caffeine in it, natural caffeine. So it sounds like, sort of like Percepta, which has natural caffeine coming from the oolong tea extract. And we haven't talked a lot about that. But oolong tea extract contains about 1/3 of a cup of coffee, natural caffeine. Also, this coffee fruit extract has some caffeine in it as well. I'll pull out exactly what it is. I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's about the same as about 1/4 of a cup of coffee or 1/3 of a cup of coffee. And so, if you asked me what memory supplement would be the closest, I would think, to Percepta, and I don't know if this works on plaques and tangles. I guess it would be very interesting to see if it does. We know in vitro screening it does show some disaggregation, breaking up the plaques and tangles, and I believe it's due to the polyphenols that are in the coffee fruit extract. They also have some other things like phosphatidylserine, serine, which are more on the the cell membrane types and amino acids. I don't know where they came up with this combination. And again, I don't know. They say it fuels 5 indicators of brain performance: focus, memory, learning, accuracy, and concentration. I'm wondering if this was actually done in a human clinical trial. So I'm going to have to look up some of this stuff as well.
Well, I know a lot of people are a huge fan of Costco. There's almost a cult following of Costco. So, out of curiosity, what can you tell people who are really interested in Focus Factor, who see it every time they go into a Costco store? What's in it? Also, why do you need to take so many of them in a day?
This is always one of the problems. I always think, like for Percepta, we only have 2 capsules a day. Taking 4 capsules, let's take a look. Are they big? I think they're very big, if I remember right. No, they're mediums. Oh, they're pretty big, actually. Take 4 of these a day. That's a lot. So what's in Focus Factor? It has a lot of vitamins, including vitamin B12. By the way, the B vitamins, I believe, are very good for the brain. So I'm not against like B12, B6 that have very good benefits for brain health. They have bacopen, no bacopa. I actually wrote a paper where I was looking what's the effects of ginkgo biloba and baclofen, which is a plant, on reducing brain plaques and tangles, and I actually did electron microscopy so we could visualize fibrils at 30,000 magnification. Guess what? Ginkgo biloba doesn't touch it, and neither does baclofen. So if you're looking at a target for memory loss on plaques and tangles, you're actually visualizing, can it make it fall apart? The answer is no, it doesn't touch it. But a couple of things I do like in this formulation. One is grapeseed extract. So we talked about proanthocyanins and polyphenols are in grapeseed extract. It's a good source for it. They also have bilberry fruit extract. Guess what? It probably has polyphenols in it. Huperzine A is another plant, and by the way, a lot of these memory supplements contain a lot of the same ingredients. They're all different mixtures of each other. Do you think these things are patented? They're not patented. So it's a bunch of people putting in their own exclusive little combination, which if you read the bottle, it shows proprietary, extract containing 600 milligrams of these 20 things. And again, some of them may be really small, like 1 milligram or less. And it's basically there just to show that it's there. It doesn't mean it gets into the brain. It doesn't mean it works on anything. So that's why I don't like these combinations. So Focus Factor has like 50 ingredients in it. A few of the ingredients I like, but the question is, how big are these ingredients? So it has a proprietary blend, get this, of 640 milligrams, including all this stuff. So it's very secret, like how much of the great seed extract do they actually have in out of 640 milligrams? It could be 5 milligrams, which does nothing. Probably doesn't get into the brain and probably doesn't do anything. So that's my main problem with these combinations, is that there are huge combinations of proprietary combos. You have no idea what's in it, what really is the proportion. And that tells me, does half this stuff even get into the brain? And I doubt it.
So it's the proprietary element, and it's the bioavailability question that dogs these supplements?
Yes. And especially when you start reading, what's really the combination, how many milligrams of stuff is there. For instance, Hypericin A, 100 milligrams. Okay, this is in the Brain MD supplement from Daniel Amen.
I was actually just about to ask you about that. So what do you think about Dr. Amen's supplement? What is in it, and what distinguishes it from some of these others?
That's the problem. You just said what the problem is. What does it distinguish it from all the others? All the memory supplements, and I could cite 5,000. If we actually had a list, many of the people use the same stuff. For instance, he has ginkgo biloba extract in here, okay? 80 milligrams out of a total, of about 5, 6. Oh, no, it's more than that. Wow, he has how many capsules? 4. Okay, 4 capsules a day. That's a red flag to me. Every time you start taking these things. Looks like a single O capsule, but 4 of these a day. Within a week, you're going to get sick, or within a week, I'd be throwing up. I wouldn't be able to keep it up for months and months and months at a time. And again, ginkgo biloba, 80 milligrams out of the total. Guess what? He has Hypericin A again, like everybody else. So what are we seeing in all of this? We're seeing a repetitive combination of the same stuff hashed around back and forth between different memory supplements. I got to give Prevagen uniqueness because no one has a jellyfish protein in their stuff, but I don't think it gets into the brain. Many of the things like ginkgo, baclofen, Hypericin A, it's found in most of these supplements. Does it really work? I don't know. But you know what? Concentrated cat's claw and oolong tea extract, I actually did 10 years of studies showing that oolong tea, based on partial fermentation or partial oxidation, this is how they dry the leaves, is better for your brain in targeting plaques and tangles than green tea, which is unfermented or unoxidized, or black tea, which is fully fermented and fully oxidized. That's how come I got patents for the combination of the cat's claw and the oolong tea. Surprising discovery, lots of research behind it. We didn't just make it up, and this is why we only have 2 ingredients in this product called Percepta.
Have you ever had somebody give the objection of it only having 2 ingredients and you being able to articulate that it's actually its strength?
Yes. That's a great, what you just said is a great caveat. Why is there only 2 ingredients? Maybe it doesn't work as well as Focus Factor. It has all 40 of the ingredients I need. No, it has to do with oral bioavailability and maximizing the dose that you're going to get to take every day. So the dose here is 2 capsules a day, 750 milligrams. Some of these things are like, they need thousands of milligrams to offset each other. When you have 40 ingredients, it's a big problem. If I had 40 ingredients in a memory supplement, I would want to know how many of the 40 actually get into the brain. And if I have some of the ingredients at 1 milligram, do you think that actually gets in? No. It's probably the main concentrated portion of the mixture. If I have 500 milligrams, would be very important. So you need to put in a bunch of stuff to get in. And if you have so much stuff, and by the way, they haven't done the studies looking at competition. There's a lot of competition between ginkgo biloba and baclofen. If you do that combo, how much is really getting, how much is interacting with the other ingredients? It's a big problem. And I've done a lot of research on it.
This is a really interesting conversation. I definitely want to continue it soon. Thank you so much for all of this wonderful information, Dr. Snow, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Great, Scott. Thanks a lot.